This is a beginning point. This is the beginning of the rest of my life. I got the meaning, and I got to write it down, because I don't want to forget it.
Just win, baby.
And welcome back to the Gold Jacket Podcast with me, your host, as always, Gymnastic. With me, as always, is my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, man, how you been?
I've been good, man. I am pumped for this episode. I've been waiting for this one for a while because we got a very accurate mock drafter with us today, and we're going to break down his mock draft as it relates to fantasy football, and that is, of course, Charlie Campbell. You can find him on Twitter at Draft Campbell. He is a senior draft analyst for WalterFootball.com. Charlie, great to have you along. How are you doing?
I'm great. Great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Let's dig right into this because I know we only got like 20, 25 minutes here. So let's dig right into it. And we're going to start with where the draft starts. And that's right up at the top with the quarterback position. We got Justin Fields going to San Fran, Trey Lance going to Denver, and Mac Jones heading to Washington. We want you to rank the three based on where you have them going, and which are you most confident in finding career NFL success?
Well, I think of that trio, whoever goes to San Francisco would be my one that I think would be the most confident in for having NFL success, because I think Kyle Shanahan is just a phenomenal quarterback guru, play caller, signal caller, developer. So I think whoever goes to San Francisco, I think it's going to be Fields, but there's a lot of mystery there. It could end up being Jones or Lance, but I think that would be my favorite. I think Denver's an interesting situation because they have a solid offensive line. They have a really talented young receiving core. You got a quality running back in Melvin Gordon, some mismatch tight end problems as well. So if Trey Lance or Mac Jones or maybe even Kyle Trask on day two, I think that could be pretty intriguing as well. I think that team is primed well to help a young quarterback transition to the NFL. So that would kind of be my second rated one. And Washington, they're no slouch either in terms of supporting cast. Terry McLaurin and adding Curtis Samuel now, showing some potential in the ground game. I don't think they're quite as good as the supporting cast in Denver and San Francisco, so I'd have them just a notch behind. But I definitely think that all three of those landing spots, these quarterbacks could do a lot worse.
Which of these quarterbacks do you like the most out of the class, even just not based on situation, but based on talent alone?
Well, for me, obviously Trevor Lawrence, I think is special talent, rare prospect, Andrew Luck kind of caliber level quarterback prospect coming out. So I think he's going to have a really good NFL career. And then after that, I personally like Justin Fields second. I think his skill set is just off the charts in terms of what he can do as a dual threat quarterback, but really the accuracy. I mean, he was an extremely accurate passer. He needs to develop a little bit more pocket presence and handling the blitz. Throwing against the blitz. And that's something that a lot of mobile quarterbacks need to develop because they can be a little too reliant on their feet at times. So I think that's something that can come along in the NFL. I really like Justin Fields a lot. I think he could end up being a really good pro.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And that there are some rumors going around about the trade up for Mac Jones at San Francisco's pick. and you kind of referenced it a little bit. Are you buying the potential, or do you think that that's more of a smokescreen for the 49ers?
I'm inclined to think it's a smokescreen. I asked around a lot of scouts who have been on the pro day circuit and have talked with friends at San Francisco, and the San Francisco staff is being pretty coy about it. They weren't kind of coming out and saying it. Some guys thought, though, that the general kind of reading between the lines leaned towards Fields. And these scouts know more than I do, and so I lean on them. So their inclination was towards Fields. I spoke with a GM who said if they wanted Mac Jones, I think they could have traded the other way. If they wanted Trey Lance, I don't think they had to go up as far as they did. So he thought Fields was their target, but it is a mystery. No one knows for sure. Some guys did think that Jones or Lance was who they had in mind. So it's a big mystery right now. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Definitely. I think we can agree that the draft probably starts there at number 3 now. I know I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah today as well, and he said that outside of it's a very small group that actually knows what's going on in San Francisco, and it's not even the assistants know at this point. So it's really going to be interesting come draft night. So your first non-QB weapon off the board is Kyle Pitts. Me and my co-host have been kind of pushing back, and I guess we look at it from a fantasy perspective. So I guess from your perspective, should we buy the hype for Kyle Pitts? Is Kyle Pitts this good that he be the first offensive weapon off the board that isn't a quarterback?
Absolutely. I know from talking to a variety of teams, he's the consensus second-rated player in this draft behind only Trevor Lawrence. So on boards across the league, he graded out second overall. So he is the real deal as a prospect. I know some teams thought he could be a wide receiver. They thought he could be a poor man's Calvin Johnson, and I think you saw proof with the 40 time and the full 6'6", 240-pound player. He can play X split end receiver. He can play Z slot receiver, traditional tight end. He's just such a mismatch weapon because even when he's covered, his incredible wingspan and height, he makes catches over coverage, but he's such a shifty route runner, deceptive speed. You see it on that 70-yard touchdown against Ole Miss where he just pulls away from the defense. I mean, this guy is just a phenomenal talent, and scouts rave about him as a person. And I've spoken to people who were with him at Florida, and they rave about him. Hard worker, really intelligent, great student of the game, mastered the offense, knew what everyone was supposed to do, not just himself, figured out how he was going to be covered by looking at how the defense was lining up. So he knew who was going to be covering him. So, and a great guy, 6 days a week, and then flips the switch on game day and is a true competitor that wants to dominate. So from a fantasy perspective, if you're in a dynasty league, I really think you're going to be happy if you land Kyle Pitts.
Wow. That's one of the more thorough breakdowns I've heard of Kyle Pitts. And that is,
number 2 was surprising for me. Number 2 ranked player on the board, that surprises me. Honestly, what I kind of want to jump into in this mock draft was what shocked me off the board was that you had your wide receiver 2 off the board was Jaylen Waddle to the Giants and not Devonta Smith. So I was just kind of wondering why Waddle over Smith and just really why Waddle over Smith.
Yeah, I've spoken with some teams, and they have that because of the body type, just as a safer projection for the NFL. Where Waddle's body type is a bit more like Tyreek Hill in terms of the height, the build, and the speed, whereas Devonta Smith is much tougher for teams to project in terms of a wide receiver that's 170-some pounds. And actually was even a little less than that when the offseason training began. And he's down here in Tampa where I am. weighing in the 160s at one point. So that is just the alarming thing for NFL teams. Just is a wide receiver that is that thin build, that light, going to hold up in terms of taking hits. And, you think of the size of the safeties and linebackers in the NFL, even some of the bigger corners. So that's why I know some teams have Waddle over Smith, so that's why I have that in the mock draft. But I think it's really close between the two, and it also depends on kind of the scheme that these teams run and what kind of receiver they want to add to their offense. If they want that home run hitter like Tyreek Hill, or say like a Will Fuller or Robbie Anderson, deep threat kind of guy, I think they'll be more inclined to Waddle. If they want that pure route runner guy who can uncover and get open quickly, move the chains, I think they'll want Smith. So I think that you could end up seeing some 50-50 splits between the teams as to who they rate it between two.
I love it. I like that breakdown. I can definitely see that with Waddle. I can see the reasoning for the apprehension on Devonta Smith as well. So you had Travis Etienne going to the Jets in the first round. That's an obvious need for the Jets. I mean, especially in the offense that they're likely going to run with Shanahan's brother there. He's probably going to run a very similar offense to what we see in San Francisco. But then you have Najee Harris and Javonte Williams going down in round 2. Najee Harris to the Falcons and Javonte Williams to the Cardinals. All magnificent landing spots from a fantasy football perspective. All the landing spots that everybody wants to see. But I'm curious about, does this speak to the depth of class at other positions? Do you think that you have talents like Harris and Williams dropping into round 2? Or do you think that speaks to the running back market or the talent that's in this running back class? Because, I mean, we've talked at length, but we've never really had like someone like you able to break down the running back class and how deep it really might be.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a combination of the two. I think when I'm mocking things out, in the back half of the first round, there aren't as many running back needy teams. There's a really good value there stretch in terms of offensive linemen. So I think playoff teams are really going to kind of dip into that. The offensive tackle class, I think in the back half of the first round, early into the second round, you're going to see a run at that position. And I think edge rush, cornerback also has multiple guys in that range that are going to factor into that decision. Always, pass rush and pass coverage are things that playoff teams are going to be having in mind. But then as well, it's the running back position. And I think I was actually texting today with a team's director of college scouting, and we talked about how in the running back position last year, you had guys that were potential first-round talents, and DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins go into the second round because that's just kind of where teams are valuing that running back position, where those guys get pushed down a little. So it wouldn't surprise me if, between ETN and Najee Harris and Javonte Williams, you have them going in the 25 to 50 range, but, more so kind of in the early second round.
I like that. That's interesting. This question was more from my perspective, because I have not been big on these guys, but I mean, maybe it's their flexibility that they bring to the game, the idea that they can be schemed into certain situations. But Rondale Moore and Tutu Atwell, you have going, I believe it was late in round 2, and some of them were above guys like Tylan Wallace and Rashad Bateman. Do you have any size concerns with them? And what do you really think is their ceiling at the NFL level, given their size?
Well, the receivers, man, it is tough for me to mock because this is such a deep receiver draft. There's so many guys worthy of going in the second round. It's hard to find as many spots for them. That's the same case in the third round with there's going to be good receivers available in the 4th round this year and into the 5th potentially. It's just such a deep receiver class, and that's just the trend of college football over the past handful of years. Just one year after another, we're getting these great receiving drafts. So Atwell, Bateman, Rondale Moore, Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore. There's just so many really good, talented receivers. They could really go in any order. It's going to be all, beauty in the eye of the beholder. But I think Rondale Moore, Tutu Atwell can both be more of that speed receiver type, whether it's kind of a Robbie Anderson, deep threat kind of receiver. But also I think those two have a little more flexibility to them, especially Rondale Moore. He might fit more into that kind of Deebo Samuel kind of category because he can do some things out of the backfield and on stretch plays as well. Tutu Atwell is an explosive, undersized guy, definitely can stretch the field. So I think those guys have ceilings of being good number 2 receivers. I don't think they'll become, elite number 1s that are going in the first few rounds of fantasy, but I think they could end up being, for fantasy perspective, a solid mid-round pick, solid number 2 receivers in their career.
I like that. That's really interesting, actually, because we've been talking about the size concerns that are there, but you don't think that the size concerns are, do you think people are kind of overblowing the size concerns that come with these two? I think Tutu Atwell, more than anything, he's really, really small. Rondale Moore, at least he's got the athletic traits to maybe succeed more.
Yeah, I think Atwell, it's in just the thinner build, smaller guy. They'll have to move him around a bit more in terms of lining him in the slot, putting him on the outside in certain situations and matchups. So definitely the size hurts him, which is why I think, despite his game-breaking speed, he's a late 2 kind of early 3 player, but if he were slightly bigger, slightly thicker, he'd probably be more of a high 2, late 1 kind of guy. So the size definitely hurts him, and it hurts more. Size somewhat hurts Kadarius Toney, durability concerns with Kadarius Toney. So, all these guys on the second day of the draft have some kind of flaws that kind of push them down a little bit.
I love that. You want to wrap up the final question here, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of these guys in your big 3, and I was surprised he's going so late, Rashad Bateman. I have him as my wide receiver too for fantasy purposes, but like in the big in round 3, you got the big wide receivers in there. Like I said, Rashad Bateman to Washington. You got Tylan Wallace, who's depending on who you are, you love him or you hate him, to Detroit, and Tamorrion Terry to the Saints, and then a lesser one, Sage Surratt, to Minnesota. We were wondering if you could rank those guys and tell us a little bit about them and why.
Yeah, I like Bateman the most of that group. I think that in terms of the 40 speed, what he did at the pro day, he doesn't quite play up to that in watching him in game tape. But he does need to improve the hands a little bit, and I think that he would have been nice to see him have a bit more development because just he kind of split the time with Tyler Johnson. Wasn't the true natural number 1. It would have been nice to have a season just as him as the focal point to kind of really help gauge the coverage ability for defending him. But I think that he's definitely in that mix to potentially go mid second round, early second round to early third round. It's just there's just so many guys go in that range, but I think he's got a lot of potential, and I think he's going to turn into a solid starting pro receiver. I don't know if he'll be a number 1, but I think he could be a really good number 2. I think Sage Surratt, I would probably say he's more of that kind of bigger bodied type receiver. I think he could have some seasons where he gives you some nice red zone production. But he has some speed limitations in terms of separating from NFL coverage. So I think that he's really kind of valid in that third round range, mid to late third round. Tylan Wallace, it was nice to see him look healthy coming off the ACL, but I think he's not overly big and he's not overly fast. So I think he could have some limitations for the NFL, which push him as a solid number 2 receiver. So I would have him, firmly in that third round range. And then probably last of that group is Tamorrion Terry. He's kind of the riskiest, but he might have the most upside of more so than Surratt and Tylan Wallace, because Tamorrion Terry is just a massive guy, and he saw some real speed and big playability in 2019 with Florida State and earlier. And you consider the fact that they did not have quality quarterback play to help him. The offensive line wasn't good. The offense there was no consistency to help him out on offensively, but he flashed a big time skill set. So I think Tamorrion Terry is a third round pick. Wouldn't shock me if he ends up kind of being similar to Kenny Golladay in the NFL in terms of a big guy that has some ability to run, that can get downfield and make catches over coverage, and just has a mismatch ability that is kind of being undervalued here. But that also comes into effect, the medical, he was banged up last year. How serious is that? The off the field, as well as how was the character and working at Florida State? 'Cause it seemed like things kind of went south there last year. So those are some of the kind of danger signs with him there.
I like that. That's a really good breakdown of those guys. You did speak to one final thing before we let you go. You speak to a lot of these guys having like a ceiling of a wide receiver too. I'm curious to know what you think the landscape of wide receiving jobs really looks like in the NFL, because this is a deep wide receiving class. So is the expectation that some of these guys will take over from some of the wide receiver 2s that are already in town? Say, obviously Marvin Jones is a type who's probably going to lose his job a bit and drop down to the 3-4 spot. But is that your expectation? Is that a lot of these guys are going to come in and really prove themselves and potentially boot out some of the wide receiver 2s that are there?
Yeah, I think that it might not happen immediately in 2021, because that's a position that still is challenging to make the change from college to NFL. It's not like the running back position where we see that typically every year a rookie running back come into the league and really hit the ground running. So all of these receivers, I think, will need some time, especially the second day guys. But I think in a year or two, a lot of them will be number 2 wide receivers. But even some of the guys in the first round, I think Jaylen Waddle is going to be more of a number 2 in the NFL. And I could see him being paired with kind of a bigger guy. It wouldn't shock me if that's the same with Devonta Smith, given his size. It wouldn't shock me at all if he's kind of a co-number 1 in a way with another big receiver. I think Jamar Chase is maybe the real true number 1 receiver of this class. So that's why I think you see him going in the top 7, whereas Smith and Waddle, are more likely to slide into the, teens and go in the top 20.
I love that. Well, Charlie, this has been awesome. Do you have anything else to add, Jim?
No, I do not. I was actually, you know what, real quick. Are there any concerns about Sage Sherrod? Because he has a little bit of a small hand for a wide receiver. I think it's only like 8.25, if I believe that's the correct measurement. Is there any concerns there?
For Sage Surratt,
I'm-
sorry, it broke up a little.
Yes,
Sage
Sage
Surratt.
Surratt.
Yeah.
He's got.
I don't think it's too big of a concern. I spoke with team guys who said he looked good at Senior Bowl in terms of being kind of that bigger, physical receiver, box out kind of guy that can make catches over coverage. So given his height and length and ability to win over the top on 50-50 balls, which he did a really nice job in 2019, he's never a big separation guy when I watched Wake Forest. So I think his game will translate to the NFL in terms of being that kind of receiver, but I don't think the smaller hands will be too big of an issue for him. He's still going to be kind of playing that rebound game over defensive backs in the NFL the way he did at Wake.
I like that.
Perfect. Like to hear it.
Awesome. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for coming on. You can find him on Twitter at Draft Campbell. Although, if I'm not mistaken, you don't seem to be the biggest Twitter fan. So you can also find his work online at walterfootball.com. So that's probably the better spot to find you, really.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I just, in terms of there's only so much time during the day. So I focus on producing articles and texting and talking to team people over tweeting, and then trying to get that inside information out to fans, because my opinion on players at the end of the day, I don't consider it valuing much at all. But where NFL teams value these guys, that's what I really want to strive to get good information for the readers and get that out there for them to get. Where teams value guys, get that inside information to the readers, because they're the players, the scouts and teams evaluators' opinions are really what matter to me at the end of the day, and I want to get that for our readers.
I love that too. That is great, and that definitely probably speaks to your accuracy in mock drafts as well. Constantly updating and constantly being in touch with the right people. So again, Charlie, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Great talking with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Awesome. So we are done.
Yeah, man.
That was nice. So for initial reaction, I guess, for you, Jim.
He breaks down players very accurately and very in depth. You know what I mean? Several. Like the first one, I was like, okay, yeah, that's a pretty good breakdown. Pretty accurate, or articulate. Then 2, 3, 4 guys, I'm like, holy, he definitely knows his shit. Couple of these things I hope aren't 100% true in his mock, you know what I mean? But for personal reasons and stuff. But other than that, I don't really want. I hope Kadarius Toney doesn't go to the Eagles. So.
Oh man, as an Eagles fan, don't worry. I'm in the same boat, but I can see where it's really good, the insight that he has and the insight that he brought, and knowing that you're getting some really in-depth stuff when you're reading what he's given you, and when you look at his mocks and you see the breakdowns of the players. The biggest surprise for me coming out of that, and it still sticks with me as the biggest surprise, is Kyle Pitts, man. I just can't get over this. It's clear. It's true. This guy talks to NFL scouts. This guy talks to the people that know best. And this is real. I think this Kyle Pitts is real. The hype is real. The skill is real. The everything you want.
I wrote a couple notes, and this is one of them. Can you see that?
Yep. Pitts ranked number 2 player on boards.
Yeah, I was I gotta take some notes.
Only no.
No, that's the bottom note. I just zoomed in.
Okay. But what did you think? Does that change your perspective on what people are saying. Like, I know there's some people who are gung-ho on Kyle Pitts as the 101. We won't mention names, but like, you like maybe where the people missing here. Maybe like this is a guy who's going to be used in so many different schemes and is going to be used in so many different ways, and we just don't realize what an NFL team can do with a guy like Kyle Pitts.
Maybe, but I'm still not going to take him over. Especially for fantasy, because again, we're talking fantasy. I'm not going to take him over Trevor Lawrence. I'm not going to take him over Justin Fields. I'm not going to take him over Jamar Chase. And I'm not going to take him over Najee Harris. So, like, maybe the 105, 106, 107 range you're taking him. But, like, Kyle Pitts is a player that I'm willing to swing and miss on and not have it. And, like, you know, be on the other side of it and take, you know, other players like Jamar Chase and Najee Harris. Just that's me. He's a guy that I'll end up for fantasy purposes probably missing out a lot on because he's not in my price range.
Now let's hit on the running backs because I really want to talk about the running backs. I think he did the perfect like situation for fantasy. But this guy, like, I just want the listeners and the viewers to know he is not a fantasy guy. Like he'll talk fantasy, but he's not mocking with fantasy in mind like we are, like everybody on Twitter is looking at. But he nailed it for fantasy. Travis Etienne to the Jets, Najee Harris to the Falcons, and Javonte Williams to the Arizona Cardinals. If that is how this lands on draft day, who are you taking? How do you rank the three of them?
I'm probably going to be taking Najee with the Falcons. I like Arthur Smith and what he's been able to do. And previous to that, I wanted pieces of the Falcons offense with Julio still there. Calvin Ridley's still there. If this mock's true and Kyle Pitts does go there at 4, like for fantasy, I'm not on him, but like for the NFL, yeah, he's going to be a player that opens up, you know, boxes straight up. People are going to have to be guarding him. Opens up running lanes. I like that. Is Todd Gurley the running back that we knew him in 2016? No, he's not. No, he's not. So yeah, it would be Najee there. The other one I liked when he hit there was Kenny Gainwell. I liked Kenny Gainwell in Miami. That'd be all right too.
Yeah, he hit some running backs big time. Like, and like if you're a Falcons fan, you're sitting there, you're like, man, our defense is gonna give up 50 points, but an offense with Kyle Pitts, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Najee Harris might be able to go pound for pound and give you the points that you need to make up the deficiencies on the defensive side of the ball. That's for sure. But like for me, I'd probably rank them similarly. I'd probably go Najee. I'd probably go Travis Etienne just because I like the scheme more in New York. I like that fit there with Shanahan. And then for me, Javonte Williams in the Cardinals, because at the end of the day, I think that Cardinals offense, even with the running attack, is an air raid offense. It's going to go through Kyler Murray's arm, Kyler Murray's legs, and DeAndre Hopkins largely on the other side of the ball catching there. So for me, I think Javonte Williams would be last in that list, but I think no matter what you're getting gold if those three landing spots work. Same with Kenny Gainwell. I don't love Kenny Gainwell, but you have to see that is something that makes your eyes open up if he lands in Miami. I mean, Myles Gaskin will still be the change of pace guy, but Kenny Gainwell definitely will be a guy who can do a bit of both in that situation. He can be the running back. He can be the change of pace back. And I think that's a slam dunk landing spot for the Kenny Gainwell truthers and the people who stand behind Kenny Gainwell. Later in the draft,
I want to ask about you though.
Yeah,
I want to ask you something though, because like, what happens if your boy from Mississippi ends up with Kamara in the backfield?
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up next. So your boy Trey Sermon, he has landed on the Giants behind Saquon Barkley, and then my boy Kylan Hill is landing in New Orleans. So that merges the value of both. Like you've been a sermon truther and I've been a hill truther through this whole process. And if that happens,
Yep.
I would just be so. You have to hope for injuries, and you don't want to hope for injuries in fantasy. Like those guys automatically go to. I honestly don't think if you have a 3-round rookie draft, I don't think you can justify taking Kylan Hill or Trey Sermon in those 3 rounds. I just don't.
No, not if
don't
they're
think I
there. What's shocking to me with those picks, again, I'm looking at it from a fantasy standpoint. So I know he isn't doing it from a fantasy standpoint, but like how similar Trey Sermon is to Barkley in running style, and how similar Kylan Hill is to like Kamara. It's almost like if one went down, they're trying to be like, here you go, like next man up. Where I wouldn't mind like Kylan, not only really behind Saquon because he's an animal. But you know what I mean? Like a Trey Sermon behind like a Kamara as like the Thunder Lightning type of deal would be more suited for my Trey Sermon love anyway. Where Kylan Hill, he could be a power back. Like I said, he plays heavier than I thought he was at. I find him more to be like the Lightning, like the Kamara Light type of back. You know what I mean? Where he can catch balls. He can do a lot more damage out in space. But that's just me.
Yeah, and then I guess another big thing that I took away from that was the wide receiver discussion. Spot on with his final statement. That was the question. That was why I wanted the question asked. Patience at the wide receiver position. We know that some of these guys, as soon as the draft falls out and they don't have a good first year, they're going to look to move them. You can get them at this killer value. There's going to be the guys like Tamorian Terry, I think, who take definitely more than a year. Tylan Wallace, who will take more than a year. He brought even more question marks into my Tylan Wallace truth. And
I like the landing spot for Wallace, though.
Yeah,
if Wallace lands in Detroit, I like it. And I hate Tylan Wallace as a fantasy. I'm probably going to lose some followers for that, but like I'm not a fan of Tylan Wallace. So, and me saying I'd like that landing spot because I don't think he'd have to be the one. I think they'd be switching their offensive focus to more T.J. Hawkinson. I would think, and DeAndre Swift, where he could be like a number 2.
I almost think at this point that if you're landing in Detroit, though, I think your value automatically spikes because their wide receiving group is just a joke. You got Terrell Williams, who's coming off this terrible case of turf toe and knee injuries and ankle injuries galore. And you got Quintus Cephas, who at the end of the day, I feel like Cephas is and Wallace would be really similar. They're guys who don't separate a ton. Cephas plays over top. Tylan Wallace plays over top. For me, I think I land Detroit. For me, would be like, man, like you want a quicker guy. I think you want a stronger outside receiver, and you just got to roll with the Terrell Williams situation. You have to roll with the Quintus Cephas situation and get yourself a good slot guy who can also move outside and be really quick sometimes. I mean,
sticking with Detroit, though, another move I like him doing, it's not going to get fantasy attention, was Vera Tucker in the first round going to Detroit. I really, really like that move to really help with the run game and help with fucking knee biter there, Jared Goff.
Yeah,
you got to
protect Jared Goff. Like he definitely needs
a lot of time.
And I think the issue with Jared Goff is going to become like, this is a new coach. Dan Campbell's not going to be that guy who's going to be in your ears. I don't even think the offensive coordinator will be in his ear right until the last minute before that mic cuts off, like Sean McVay was. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Detroit, where he doesn't have Sean McVay in his ear, literally right up to that cutoff point. And what Jared Goff's true natural skill set is. And that's another thing that has me a little nervous. I have some Goff shares out there and I'm like, oh, but nobody wants to buy them. So it's like, I understand why they wouldn't want to buy them, but to the same point, like you got to throw the ball. Eventually he's got to throw the ball. He's got to get yards. He's going to be one of those guys who might just produce literally on the fact that he's just going to have to throw the ball a whole lot, and there's going to be a negative game script, and Detroit's going to continue their long rebuild, the decades-long rebuild that they've been struggling through.
Ooh, I don't like this news popping up from Coach Craig there. Whew. Don't like that at all.
Williams shoulder surgery. I think that's what he had last year. I think what he was trying to say to help me out with my bashing of his injury history.
I don't know, just saying.
But what's some other
the other thing too for me was Elijah Moore to Jacksonville. That was another one because as a Visca truther myself, I think that just muddies the situation really for who's going to be that wide receiver, because I mean they already got DJ Chark, they already got Visca. Then I think he's competing with who they signed, Marvin Jones, right? So he'd be competing with Marvin Jones. That's a little muddy for me because I like Elijah Moore. That would totally take his value for IDP leagues. I really like J.C. Horn going to Carolina. That would be all right. I had him mocked to Dallas because I didn't think he'd go. But this is before what I thought Carolina was going to draft a quarterback before the Sam Darnold news. But I like that for IDP leagues. If anybody's in a couple of those, I'm in 2. So looking at that, I really like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me as an Eagles fan, it breaks my heart to see Horn and Surtain gone, and us having. I think he has us taking Caleb Farley as the third option now, who has the back issues, and the rumors of some major concern with some teams over the back issues that Caleb Farley has. Another one that stood out for me is there was rumors of the Cincinnati Bengals going Jamar Chase at 5, and that's why the Eagles dropped back, because they didn't think that they were getting Chase or Pitts. And obviously the Eagles were looking to get some more pieces to continue the rebuild next season, potentially of 3 firsts. But he has Terrace Marshall going to the Bengals and Penei Sewell going in round 1 to the Bengals. I think that is the dream scenario for Bengals fans. You still get the LSU connection there with Terrace Marshall. You don't get the LSU connection as in Jamar Chase, but you still get it in a different respect. And I mean, Terrace Marshall, I mean, we've talked about him a few times, and I think, and in a few group chats, we've talked about it at length, that Terrace Marshall just kind of, he looks lazy. He looks like a third option. He looks like he could fit as a third option behind T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, and he can do his thing. He can play his game, and maybe when he reaches the NFL level and there's stiffer competition, maybe he steps that level up and versus what we were seeing at LSU. I thought that was a really, really intriguing pick, because I actually really want Philadelphia to look at Terrace Marshall with that pick, and instead he had Kadarius Toney at pick 37, and then at 38 to the Bengals he had Terrace Marshall. But I mean, you know my opinion on Kadarius Toney and my opinion on the Philadelphia Eagles situation. I think we need an alpha. We need an outside guy. We need someone who's going to step up and be that guy that you can throw the ball to in almost any situation. I personally believe we have a Kadarius Toney-like player that a lot of people are writing off way too quickly in Jalen Reagor. So that was another one that stood out to me, was the Terrace Marshall move and the Kadarius Toney, because I really don't like that for Philly.
I don't see even the need for the third wide receiver option being spent that deep. They locked up Boyd. They got Higgins on a cheap deal, right? Like, I don't know. Me personally, I just think, like, keep hitting the guard positions on the offensive line, because you need to keep those fucking boys up, man, whether it be Mixon getting bamboozled behind the line or Gio Bernard, whoever it's going to be. And your dream boy there, your face of the franchise, Joe Burrow, man, like, you better take as many swings at the well. If you, me personally, if you have a luxury pick where you're going to go wide receiver, I think you keep swinging at offensive line until you sew that hole up.
I mean, unless the Bengals are focused on, like, obviously we know that after the draft, there's a lot of decent free agents still out there, and maybe they're going to try and makeshift the line with what's left over in the free agent market. Maybe grab out like a Penny Sewell or Rashawn Slater and really address one of the big holes, and then kind of makeshift the line a little bit with the rest of the draft, because there's still a lot of guys out there who are probably going to come in on those veterans minimum or the CBA minimum deals that they can get. And those will come after the draft. At this point, you're not going to see any more of these sign-ins, really. The teams are going to see how the draft shakes out, what they can get for the UDFAs, and then they're going to say, okay, what's left out there for us in the free agent market? And that's why I think they're going to go big, try and hit that home run with a Sewell or a Slater, and then maybe hold back. Maybe they're going to wait and see what they can do to makeshift the line. And then when the cap goes up next year and there's more money to play with, then they can go out and fetch some more free agents and continue to solidify that line a little bit more. That's what I'm thinking in Cincinnati. But I mean, when I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks today, they were saying that they don't even think Joe Burrow will beat. No, it wasn't them. It was Justin Boone, and he had on the Edwin Porras, and they don't think that Joe Burrow will even be ready for week one. It's way too soon to expect him to be ready for week one. So makeshift offensive line isn't necessarily a bad thing to roll with, but you definitely need to address it in the offensive line in a big way.
So there's definitely three more things in this draft that I stuck out, and I just want to touch on you from a fantasy. Kellen Mond, he has going to Houston. Your thoughts on that with the Deshaun Watson, the news, 22 people in criminal charges now being filed. How do you like that? Do you think he's going to get a shot to play this year for Houston? If he does, do you think it's even worth having him? Or do you think he's a guy that you draft if this happens and you trade him if the worst news of Deshaun Watson before he even takes a snap?
I really like Kellen Mond. I mean, we've talked about him in group chats. I've said, but I really like Kellen Mond. I think he's got that NFL prototype guy. I just think there's a lot of development. Like, he was really highly inaccurate. Like, there's still a lot of stuff that he needs to develop and that he needs to work on. And Houston's a crapshoot of a situation to end up being thrown into. They signed literally every veteran you can name. Anybody over the age of 30, they took a shot at this season, this offseason. I think he'd get the chance to play, though. I realistically, you look at what's the backup plans? You got Ryan Finley and somebody else, and I'm just not convinced, honestly, for those situations. Whereas Kellen Mond, if you take that shot, and I don't know if it was round 2 or round 3, I think it was round 3 that I'm taking Kellen Mond. You can roll the dice, see what happens. Honestly, why not? Why not see what you got in him? Why not see what you can develop?
Another one for fantasy purposes, and this would probably kill a few people's hopes and dreams with James Robinson, the UDFA that won people leagues, but he has Michael Carter going to Jacksonville as the complement, as the speed back. Do you think that helps, hurts? What's up with that if that happens? That would
probably be one of the worst case scenarios from a James Robinson perspective. The Carlos Hyde is Carlos Hyde. Whatever you live with that situation. Carlos Hyde's going to take a few carries a game and probably maybe on average 1 target per game through the entirety of the season. But at the end of the day, Michael Carter, I think, would be a big one. I think that would be a bit of a bust move on the James Robinson owners, because that's taken away a lot of the PPR aspect of James Robinson. That Michael Carter is going to be that change of pace guy, and wherever he goes, because he's not a big guy, he's not going to be able to carry the big load that you would want your premier back to carry. So, I mean, there's still going to be a fairly big there's going to be a big chunk no matter what for both, whoever the two main people are in Jacksonville. And I'm a believer in James Robinson no matter what, but that definitely plays into the PPR aspect big time for me. I'd be a little nervous. That would probably be one of the few situations where I'd start to get nervous.
And then a third guy, he's super sneaky. Nobody really I hear talking about him. Just a few guys around my bubble. He's a guy I've been grabbing in drafts if they've been happening already early. So I've been taking him real late. And he has him going to the Jets. It's Josh Palmer. I'm not sure that does anything really because they have Denzel Mims and who did they sign? The big guy.
Jets, Corey Davis.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Corey Davis. So I think that really, I always forget about Corey Davis. So that really hurts him, I think. But I mean, I don't know if you like him. If Josh Palmer was a guy looking to do before, a wide receiver from Tennessee. So I mean,
yeah, for me,
I'd like it, but I wouldn't like it for the Jets.
I'm on Josh Palmer. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that you can have better options to look at. You could get a guy what he said about Tamorrion Terry just solidifies that. I mean, you got to grab that guy late if you can get him. Everybody that we've talked to and discussed Tamorrion Terry would say he's the highest risk, but that's ceiling. Highest risk, but that ceiling. It's always that ceiling. And that's the thing that's most attractive from a fantasy perspective because you're getting them in round 3 likely. At this point, I haven't seen his ADP go up enough that you're not going to get him as maybe your first pick in round 3, 301, 302, 303. But Palmer can probably be head wherever. If you want to take the shot on him, I just don't think his ceiling's as good as a Tamorrion Terry. For me, I mean, I just rather.
Here's the thing, though, man. Terry's sneaking up. Terry now in drafts, in mock drafts, he's sneaking into the back end of the second. He's going 207, 208, 209 range, where before I was grabbing him in the third, the fourth, not even seeing him go if I didn't take him, or a couple other guys didn't take him. But now he's getting real mainstream hype with, like you say, the ceiling. There is concerns with Tamorrion Terry, but it's a home run swing. If this kid pans out, fuck, he's unbelievable. He's a different.
The athletic
metrics.
The athletic metrics are just huge, man. I mean, I could see it being comparable to a DK Metcalf, but definitely not the ceiling. We won't go that high with it, but he's that type of player. He's built that way. He's got the athletic metrics to boot. This guy in the right position and with the right coach to really get him in the game and get him focused on the game, keep the off-field issues aside and take full advantage of Tamorrion Terry, the athlete, the freak athlete. Be huge. It would be huge for whoever can unlock that potential in Terry. And man, I know he's starting to creep up. The mainstream is hitting him. But I mean, if he's still going after, for me, this draft changes after 15 players. We've talked about it a few times. After 15 players, take your shots anywhere. So if you start to see this guy go at 204, 205, 206, Tamorrion Terry wouldn't surprise me because you start taking your shots after those first 15. So it wouldn't surprise me if that happened right away.
Yeah, makes sense. The other one for fantasy purposes, actually, this is love him or hate him. I mean, I think he should have came out last year, his draft stock, and this definitely fell because of it. The Chiefs select in round 4, Chuba Hubbard. How you feel about that?
That one could be really intriguing. I mean, I think we learned with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, that the ceiling as a running back in the Kansas City Chiefs offense is pretty limited, pretty tough to go by. But I mean, the value that you're going to get him at, he's going to be one of those guys you take the shot at. He's going to be one of those guys going at the end of the second round, early third round. So to me, it might be worth the shot to see what they can do with him because obviously, the receiving situation there is Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and then they have Demarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman. But Demarcus Robinson and Mecole Hardman have never really stood out. They've never really become anything to get too excited about. So throwing in another option for that offense, you never know what that option could become. And Chuba Hubbard, I feel like Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be more the running back, and Chuba Hubbard maybe used in the pass game. Like, it's tough to say how they'd end up using him because we've never really had to watch the Kansas City Chiefs really dual threat running backs or really use a singular running back at all because they're so on the arm of Patrick Mahomes.
I'm still buying into CEH there. He had a lot of touchdowns called back. Just gonna throw that out there real quick. I'm all chiefed up there. Yeah, he had a lot of touchdowns called back on plays, and I've said this before on previous podcasts, on plays that weren't even designed on his part of the run. So, like, I mean, the run was to the right, the hold was on the left side of the line, had nothing to do with his pig yard chunk or touchdown. So there is room for improvement there, and what he had to do. I mean, I've never seen a player on the flip side of this. I've never seen a player that his draft value skyrocketed based on landing spot and like flip flops. You know what I mean? With on the yang to the yin to his yang would be DeAndre Swift, right? Like pre-draft, it was clear Swift was 1 or 2, but definitely ahead of CEH, and then post-draft, that wherever they were in your pre-draft rankings, like they pretty much just yo-yoed for a lot of dudes. So like it's crazy, but I think like
that
RB1 isn't as it means.
I even got excited for the Clyde Edwards-Helaire landing spot, and I even think that was kind of a miss on a lot of our parts to just assume that Kansas City with a running back was going to change. That person was going to get massive, like, playing time. They were going to see a lot of touches. They were going to see a lot of targets. I just think that was a massive miss on everybody's part, whether we want to admit it or not. Could Clyde Edwards-Helaire grow in a little bit, like grow into the role a bit more and see a little bit more each year and stuff? Yeah, but, I mean, I don't know if his ceiling's any higher than being, like, RB2, like right at the entry, right after RB1, right at the entryway of RB2 there, like your RB 13, 14, 15, 16. I just don't know if his ceiling's any higher than that, to be honest, because he has a ceiling in PPR. He has a ceiling in how much the Chiefs are going to use him in the run game and in the as a target in the passing game. So for me, I just think that there's a ceiling to be had there, and I think that was just a miss. That was a big hype of the landing spot, and a lot of people just missed on that call, I think.
Yeah, that's me too. It's the Patrick Mahomes endorsement, right? The fact that everyone thought he made the pick and pound the table for him. I personally think Clyde Edwards-Helaire falls in like the RB8 to RB14 range, somewhere around there. I think his ceiling is like, I'm going to say RB8 just because I probably own a little bit too many shares of him, so I was trying to get a trade-off. But yeah, RB around there, probably more comfortably, probably RB9. But.
Yeah, and we know, like, for me, like, we know running backs are not that like the wide receiver and tight end position. You can wait those 2 or 3 years out, but the running backs don't really have that wide open window. So if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not getting that opportunity after 2 years, after 3 years, your window's closing. The guy's not going to produce where you want him to produce. I can see, like RB8. I mean, maybe, but I think that it's too good. Like the market's too good at running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire opportunity share is not going to be there to equate to fantasy points versus like you got CMC back. You got Zeke, who's going to have Dak back. You got James Robinson, we still have to have him in the discussion. We got Alvin Kamara. We got Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift. You got Miles Sanders, who can still be in the discussion, maybe. With Jalen Hurts there, maybe. That's why I say maybe. Like, for me, it's tough. It's tough to say what's actually going to come of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But I think if you buy him or if you get him and you tape your expectation to him being the high end RB2, you'll be pretty content with the production you get from him personally. But Chuba Hubbard, I don't think really scares me for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and for the shares there.
Chuba or Daryl?
Jeez, can I say neither?
Oh man,
If you're gonna
I'll
put,
just
if
bust
you're
a
gonna
cap.
bet, because Charlie's mock draft was 4 rounds. So if you're gonna put anywheres between round 2 and round 4 draft capital into a running back, I can probably say Chuba over Darrell Williams. I can honestly say that I think they'd probably use Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. And to your point with CEH, it's not like too many running backs get stuck behind DeMarco Murray, right? Like there's not those Derrick Henrys out there that get 2-3 years in before they like really bust out. Yeah, there's not too many of those guys. I really liked his, like I said, his draft, his mock drafts here.
Yeah, and I really like how he really gives you, like, he really likes to build on like just what he gets, the information he gets, because it is true at the end of the day, he's got that funnel that comes from scouts, college scouts, NFL scouts, the guys who are there at the pro days, the guys who are seeing the players, the guys who it's their job to watch film, to crunch film and to say, this is our guy, that's our guy. So I really like that he's doing that. And that gives a completely different perspective on how a mock draft is done versus what we see from people who just want the best fantasy landing spots. It's a whole different look of everything. And I really like that about what Charlie brought to the show today. And for me also, the last thing I want to touch on is the tight ends. Pat Freiermuth to Carolina. He also had yeah, that could be an interesting spot. And then he also had what was it that he had? He had Philadelphia.
Yeah, you guys taken. Yeah. Yeah, you guys taken and passing on Brevin Jordan.
And pass on Brevin Jordan, and Brevin Jordan going to the New York Jets. So the ghost of Chris Herndon continues to disappear, as we see before our very eyes, if Brevin Jordan lands there. But yeah, the tight end position, those are definitely some really nice landing spots too. Not from a Philly perspective. If you're passing on Brevin Jordan, you're out of your mind, especially in it. I think he had it in round 3 where the pass was happening, late round 3. But Pat Freiermuth, do we trust that Carolina is going to use the tight end more? Maybe with Sam Darnold in town, we might see the tight end more. I know that my boy Jim there was a bit of an Ian Thomas guy last off season when we talked, kind of missed, but it happens.
Everybody missed.
Yeah, you can't. I was not buying or taking any Ian Thomas share whatsoever. But now with Curtis Samuel out of town and Pat Freiermuth in town, suddenly I'm a little more intrigued by that type of situation.
Here, I'm gonna give you a philosophy on late round tight ends. Treat them like spaghetti, right? You throw them to the wall. A couple of them will stick. Just grab a bunch, right? Like, just fucking take some rapid fire shotgun shots on the.
Definitely. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at it like you're getting late, and you're looking at, I can get this team's wide receiver 6, this team's practice squad running back, this team, or I could get this team's sure thing on the field tight end 1 or 2. So
yeah, they might not all hit, but like I said, you take those Ian Thomases, those Irv Smiths,
Logan Thomas, Robert Tonyan,
Logan Thomas,
undrafted last year.
Absolutely, a couple of them will hit. You know what I mean? So, and you nailed 2 of them right there. Like, what was Tonyan? Tight end 3, right?
Yeah, he finished tight end 3, and I think that Logan Thomas was 5 or 6, something like that. And they went undrafted. Right, so in most.
Treat them like spaghetti and just chuck them against the wall.
Definitely. And there's a good note to end the show on. Jules dropping the Kittle and Andrews were both undrafted in their breakout seasons too.
That's probably why Kyle Pitts will go undrafted in his breakout season too, because people will be sick and tired of 2 years of lack of production. Year 3, boom, breaks out, goes undrafted.
Oh man, I don't think we're gonna win on the Kyle Pitts train. I think we either hop on or we just stop talking about it. I'm just busting chops.
Anyways, this was awesome. This was great to have Charlie Campbell on and chatting about his mock draft and then getting the opportunity to react and break down his mock draft. A different change of pace than us just throwing together mock drafts and people listening to
yet another mock draft where we just pray for good fantasy landing spots. But
he nailed good fantasy landing spots. He wasn't even trying. That's what I loved about it. Perfect.
Exactly. But
he nailed the position everybody wants, running back.
And he nailed some good wide receivers, and he nailed some bang on tight ends as well. So that was definitely really good. Just a shout out to the True North Fantasy Football Network. You can find them at True North FFB on Twitter, YouTube, TNFF Network. Hit that subscribe, and on the internet, TrueNorthFFB.com. Shout out to Viridian Global as well. Jim's rocking all the Viridian Global gear today. The hat, the shirt. Go check it out, ViridianGlobal.com or at Viridian Global on Twitter. And of course, shout out to Monkey Knife Fight. We didn't play the ad read, but shout out to Monkey Knife Fight. Go and put your first deposit with the code TNFF, and they will match it up to $50. And that's it for us. You can follow Jim on Twitter at GoldJacketQBs. You can follow me on Twitter at Connor10. And next week, we're still building the show. Well, I don't think we actually know if we have a guest or what we're doing yet, but we are still building that show for all of you.
We have a guest that we want on. We just got to see if he's going to come on.
And we may very well be talking a completely different way to look at fantasy football and how to build your fantasy football team is what we'll be looking at. And then I believe in 2 weeks' time, we have a huge guest. So make sure you wait for that because we're not going to tell you right now. But keep an eye on Twitter and definitely check us out next week to find out who that guest is. But until next Tuesday, we'll see you then.